A huge crystal chamber floated in the darkness of space, catching the light from a nearby star and reflecting it in brilliant colors. Inside this floating palace, 12 alien species sat around a circular table that appeared to be made of pure light. Though each representative looked completely different, they all had one thing in common. They believed themselves to be the most important beings in the galaxy. Supreme Arbiter Zextal stood in the center of the room. His body was made of living crystal, and it changed color every time he spoke. He had ruled the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years, and in that time no one had ever challenged his decisions. His voice was clear and cool, and it rang throughout the room. "We are here today to discuss the affairs of humanity," Zaxxer declared. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the table, the other council members shifted in their seats. War Marshal Chorus of the Cass Empire leaned forward, his hulking body covered with the scars of hundreds of battles. His people were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, never encountering an enemy they could not defeat. "Humanity has gone too far," Coraldo said, his voice like a whetstone. "They dare take worlds that belong to us. They are spreading across the galaxy like a plague." Vala, Science Prime of the Technological Collective, nodded in agreement. Her pale blue skin glowed softly as the machines inside her processed information with incredible speed. "Analysis complete," she said in an emotionless voice. "Humanity is expanding at a rate of At this rate, we will control vast territories within 50 years. This is unacceptable," whispered Soriel, ambassador of the Serpent Realm, as he coiled and uncoiled his snake-like body. "My people have watched the outer planetary system. They have seized planets without permission, and acted as if the galaxy were theirs." Exect raised his crystal hand, and the room fell silent. For 3 millennia he has guided the Council with wisdom and power. Under his leadership, the Council has brought peace to the galaxy by ensuring that everyone knows their place. The strong rule and the weak obey. Such was the law of nature. "Let's review what we know about humanity," said Zextal. "Show me the intelligence report." The air above the table shimmered, and an image appeared. The council members saw a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. They saw a primitive city with simple technology. They saw humans walking around in simple clothing and driving fossil fuel-burning ground vehicle. "This is their home planet, Earth," Fonara explained. "The population is about 8 billion. Their technology is laughably primitive. They've only recently learned how to leave their planet with a small number of humans. Their weapons consist of kinetic energy projectiles and simple nuclear weapons. Even the fastest starships take months to travel between planets in their own system." The image cut to show human settlements on other planets, simple domed buildings, basic mining equipment, small research facility. Everything looked crude and makeshift, like children playing with building blocks. "They have colonized 17 worlds so far," Nala continued, "and their settlements are small and poorly defended. They use outdated shielding technology and weapons centuries behind ours." Cole laughed, a sound that sounded like rocks falling from a mountain. "I've fought the Zapparian war fleets, and the crystalline armies of Nexus Prime. They're like children playing with toys. A single one of my battle cruisers could wipe out their entire star fleet." General Vexmore of the Hive Collective added. His insectoid features clicked as he spoke. "They still fight with individual soldiers, not connected mental networks. They are unable to coordinate their forces effectively. They don't understand the correct tactics." Ambassador Soriel tasted the air, his tongue sticking out. "My spies report that their leaders spend most of their time arguing with each other. They can't even agree on simple issues. How could such a divided race pose a real threat?" The council members looked at each other, and there was a consensus on their faces. These humans were clearly inferior, and did not understand their place in the galaxy. They needed to be taught a lesson before their ignorance caused serious problems. "What reports have the scouts had on their defenses?" asked Zextal. "Minimal," Vernala replied. "They have a few patrol ships stationed around the outer colonies, but nothing that would deter a serious attack. Their homeworld has a few orbital platforms, but they are powered by fusion reactors that we can easily disable. Their reaction time to threats is slow and their communication systems are basic." "Perfect," Korath growled. "A swift attack on their homeworld would end it before it began. Destroy their leader and their colonies would surrender quickly." "Wait," said Mars, the peace group's advisor. Her soft, tree-like body swayed as she spoke. "Perhaps we should communicate with them first. Perhaps they don't even realize they're encroaching on our territory." The other council members stared at her in shock. Martha's people were always known for seeking peaceful solutions, but even they knew when force was necessary. "Communicate." Korth's scarred face twisted into a snarl. "We've already warned these humans. We've sent them a message to stop expanding. They've ignored our order. We've sent emissaries to their colonies. The humans have told our ambassadors to leave. They have no respect for our authority. That is true, Zextol acknowledged. We have attempted diplomatic negotiations 3 times, but all 3 times they have refused to recognize our legitimate rights to these star systems. They even had the audacity to tell our representatives that space belongs to everyone. A stunned silence filled the chamber. The idea that any species could claim equal rights to the universe was incomprehensible to them. For millions of years, the strong got what they wanted and the weak accepted their fate. That was the way of the universe. The universe belongs to all of us. Ambassador Soriel's voice was laced with contempt. These creatures have no understanding of reality. We must teach them their place. I agree, Nala said. Their actions demonstrate a fundamental lack of understanding of how civilization works. This cannot continue. One by one, the other council members chimed in. They all agreed that the humans had gone too far. Some wanted to destroy human settlements entirely. Others wanted to enslave humans and use them as labor. A few more argued that humans should be relocated to a planet where they should be carefully monitored. Finally, Zexol called for silence. I have heard all opinions, he said. Now we must make a decision. Those in favor of immediate military action against human expansion, raise your hands and feet. Around the table, hands, claws, tentacles, and crystalline forms all rose into the air. Even Advisor Marthek hesitated for a moment before slowly raising his branch-like arm. Zexol declared, "The vote is unanimous. We will mobilize the combined fleets of our member species. This human problem will be resolved swiftly and permanently." Cole stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow across the crystal table. "How long will it take to prepare your fleet?" Admiral Kexar of the Star Empire answered. 30 standard cycles should be plenty. My ships will be ready in 20. The others will take a little longer to adjust their forces. That's fine, Zexar. War Marshal Chorus, take command of the invasion force. Use any means necessary. But remember, we must finish this quickly. The longer it takes, the greater the chance that other primitive species will consider challenging our authority. Understood, Chorus replied. I will enter the battle with 300 battle cruisers, 500 escort ships, and enough ground forces to simultaneously occupy every human planet. They would not even have time to surrender before the war was over. What about their homeland? General Vexmore asked. Should it be preserved as an example to other nations? Zul's crystals shimmered in multiple colors as he pondered the question. Make your decision, War Marshal. If they surrender immediately, perhaps we can allow some of them to live on as servants. If they resist, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The council members began discussing the details of the invasion. Which ships would attack which targets? How to divide human territory among the victorious races? What to do with the surviving humans? And so on. As they talked, Zexol felt a moment of satisfaction. During his 3,000 years of leadership, he had faced many challenges, rebellious species, struggles over resources, and territorial dispute. Each time, the Council's technological superiority and unity of purpose had prevailed, and humanity was no exception. One more thing, he said, and the room fell silent again. All of our subject species should be informed of this operation. They will see what happens to those who do not accept the authority of the Council. This will serve as a warning to others who may consider challenging us. Of course, Korath agreed. Nothing breeds respect like a show of power. The meeting continued for several more hours as they worked out the final details. Supply lines, communication protocols, rules of engagement, everything was meticulously planned. These were civilized people, not barbarians. Even warfare was orchestrated. When the meeting finally concluded, the council members began to depart for their homelands. While everyone was diligently preparing for what everyone believed would be the shortest war in the history of the galaxy, Zexol remained in his crystal room, gazing at the star. Somewhere far away on a small blue planet, primitive creatures called humans lived simple lives. They were unaware that their fate had been decided by those on higher up. He wondered if the humans would understand what was happening when the council fleet arrived. Would they realize that their arrogance had sealed their fate, or would they remain ignorant until the very end? It didn't matter. Ignorance was no excuse for defying the natural order, he thought. Humanity will learn its lesson, even if that lesson comes too late to save it. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form beamed with satisfaction as he wrote the final log entry for the day. Humanity's problems will be resolved within 40 standard cycles. This operation will demonstrate once again that the authority of the Galactic Council cannot be challenged. Order will be restored to the galaxy. Little did he know that at that very moment, on dozens of worlds within Council territory, seemingly ordinary beings were receiving the simple message. Merchants, diplomats, researchers, refugees, people who had been living quietly among the Council's species for years, even decades. The message was short and coded, but its meaning was clear to those who received it. Humanity watched the council meeting. They knew of the vote, and after years of meticulous preparation, the time had finally come to show their true colors to the galaxy. But for now, Zexal floated in the crystal chamber, completely confident in his decision. The council had voted unanimously. Their fleet was the most powerful in the galaxy, their technology beyond anything primitive humanity could have imagined. What could possibly go wrong? 25 cycles had passed since the unanimous decision of the council. Fleet Admiral Chorus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, overseeing the fleet as it prepared for its final approach to human space. 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy marched in perfect formation behind him, each equipped with enough firepower to destroy a planet. "Sir," called the communications officer. They were receiving initial reports from the scout fleet. Cole nodded. Standard military procedure required advanced scouts to probe enemy defenses before the main force arrived. 3 scouting squadrons had been sent ahead to gather information on the location of humanity around the outer colonies. "Display that on the main screen," he ordered. The bridge's giant display came on, showing a star map, showing the locations of the 3 scouting fleets. Red markers indicated where they should be, along the mission timeline. But something was wrong. 2 of the markers were flashing, indicating they hadn't been in contact for over 6 hours. "What's the status of Scout Unit Alpha?" Korath asked. "Commander, we lost contact with them 18 hours ago. The last transmission was from the Jupiter system in human space. They reported that they had begun a reconnaissance sweep of the outer planets. Scout Beta is also missing. Last contact was 12 hours ago, near a human mining station in the Proxima system." Chorus frowned. His scouts were seasoned veterans and knew how to avoid detection. They may have silenced their communications to avoid alerting the humans, but standard protocol required a status report every 4 hours. "What about Gamma Recon?" "They're still communicating, Commander. They're approaching the human colony at Kepler 4. The communications officer had his hand on the earpiece, listening intently. "Commander, we've received an urgent transmission from Gamma Recon. Please connect." Commander Vexel's voice came over the speaker. "This is Commander Gamma, Fleet Command. We're under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. The humans have weaponry I have never seen before. They are using some kind of transparent spacecraft, and communication has suddenly ceased." On the display screen, the marker for the 3rd Recon Squadron began to flash red. Korath stared at the screen in disbelief. 3 scout fleets vanished without a trace. Each group consisted of 30 fast attack ships, equipped with the most advanced sensors and weaponry in the galaxy. How could primitive humans have defeated them so easily? "Commander," the tactical officer called out, "we've detected movement in the asteroid field ahead. Multiple fast-moving contact objects." The screen switched to a tactical map of the space ahead. Dozens of red dots were moving toward the Council fleet. But as Chorus watched, something unbelievable happen. One by one, the dots began to disappear, until they vanished entirely from the sensors. "What happened to that ship?" Chorus demanded. "We don't know, sir. They are no longer detected by any of our detection systems. It's as if they have ceased to exist." "That can't be. Nothing disappears from our sensors. We are using quantum-level detection arrays." Before anyone could respond, alarms began to ring throughout the bridge. The tactical displays exploded with new contacts, but they were appearing inside the Council fleet formation. "Several enemy ships have appeared within our defenses," the tactical officer shouted. "How did they get past our sensors?" Cole watched in horror as sleek, dark ships emerged from between the strategically positioned battlecruisers. They had somehow slipped past every detection system and defense the fleet had in place. Every ship, every battle station, opened fire on every human ship. The Council fleet exploded with weapons fire. Huge energy beams and particle cannons delivered devastating impacts to the human ship. But something was wrong. The weapons that were supposed to destroy any ship instantly were not having any effect. "Sir, our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. It appears they have some kind of adaptive shield to counter our energy frequencies." "That's impossible. We use technology thousands of years advanced, far beyond anything primitive man could create." But as he spoke, the human ships began to fire back. What fired from their weapons ports was not the primitive kinetic energy projectiles the Council had expected, but a stream of pure energy unlike anything recorded in the database, striking the Council ships with devastating precision. The first battlecruiser to be hit was annihilated. What was there one moment was now an expanding cloud of particles the next. No explosions, no debris, nothing, just nothing. "Report," Colerus shouted, nearly drowned out by the blaring alarms of his own ship. "The Dominator has been completely destroyed, sir." Whatever weapon was used broke the molecular bonds of the entire ship in an instant. More human ships were appearing throughout the fleet formation. They moved with impossible speed and agility, striking with precision, then disappearing before the Council ships could effectively target them. Cole from the command ship felt something he had never experienced in centuries of war. They were not like the primitive humans described in the intelligence reports. These ships employed technology that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Communications quickly connect to the high-orbit ship Sol. Sir, we're trying, but there seems to be some interference. All long-range communications have been cut off. Another Council ship vanished in an impossible flash, and then another. Human ships were systematically destroying the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever seen, and Colorus was powerless to stop it. Sir, the science officer's voice was filled with panic. We have detected a massive energy signal coming from the direction of Council space. Something is happening to our home system. The main display switched to a galactic map, red warning lights flashing on dozens of Council worlds. Whatever was happening to the Chorus fleet was happening all across their territory as well. At that moment, the communication system crackled and a transmission came through, but it wasn't from the Council. The voice was human, calm and cold. Council fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Forces. You have entered human space with hostile intent. You have 10 minutes to retreat across the perimeter or you will be deemed an invader. Chorus spoke up. Human, you threaten the Galactic Council. We are here to restore order to this sector. Surrender immediately and we may grant you mercy. The human paused for a moment before answering, and when she spoke again, there was something in her voice that made Chorus's blood run cold. War Marshal Korath of the Cass Empire, born on Cass Prime year 410-7, a veteran of the Proxima Campaign, the Vegan Wars, and the suppression of the Outer Rim Rebellion. Married to the Valkyrie Sisa, he has 3 children. Your eldest son is currently stationed aboard the battlecruiser Iron Fist in your home fleet. How could this human know so much about his personal life? That information was top secret to the Council. You seem surprised we know this about you, Admiral Chen continued. There's no need to be surprised. We've been keeping an eye on the Council for a long time. We know all of your military deployments, political structures, and economic systems. We even know the results of votes from 25 cycles ago. Impossible, Korath whispered. Our communications are completely secure. Nothing is secure from us, War Master. Our people are now assembled on every Council world. They have lived among you for decades, learning your ways and studying your weaknesses. Did you really think we could remain ignorant while you planned our destruction in a tactical display? Council ships are disappearing one after another. Human ships seem to appear everywhere at once, attack with surgical precision, and disappear before they can strike back. Your 10 minutes have become 5, Admiral Chen announced. I suggest you use them wisely. Cole's thoughts raced. Everything about this situation was wrong. Humanity was supposed to be primitive. Their technology was supposed to be centuries behind the Council's standards. Their military was supposed to be disorganized and ineffective. And yet they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to know every move they made beforehand. Sir, the tactical officer called out, we're detecting a transmission across all Council frequency bands apparently emanating from one of our ships. What transmission? It's an audio recording, sir. It sounds like screaming. Chorus's face paled. The humans were broadcasting the death cries of his crew across the Council fleet. It was a brutal psychological warfare designed to undermine the morale of the remaining forces. But worse than the screams was what came afterwards. A calm human voice detailed how each ship had been destroyed, the technical specifications of the weapons used. A tactical explanation of why the Council's defenses had failed. It was as if the humans were lecturing on the annihilation of the galaxy's most powerful military force. Commander, we are receiving reports from surviving scout ships. It appears the humans have been monitoring our approach for weeks, knowing exactly when and where we would arrive. That cannot be. Our route had been planned by the Council's greatest strategists. However, sir, they were lying in wait for us. This battle was as if orchestrated in advance. Another thought struck Korath. If the humans had been watching the Council for so long, if they were present on every Council world, if they possessed such advanced technology, why did they hide? Admiral Chen, he called over the comm line. Why did you pretend to be primitive? Why did you let us think we were superior? The reply came immediately as if the humans had expected the question. Because we needed to know who you really were, War Marshal. We needed to know how you would react when you believed you had all the power. We needed to know whether this galactic race possessed wisdom or only power. And what conclusion did you draw? You unanimously voted for our destruction. without attempting a true diplomatic solution. You plotted to enslave those who remain. You intended to make an example of our fate and frighten other races into submission. I think that tells us all we need to know. Tactical displays showed that less than half of Korath's original fleet remained. The human ships continued their deliberate destruction, each attack perfectly calculated to inflict maximum psychological damage on the survivors. Your time is up, War Commander. Admiral Chen declared, "This is my final proposal. Retreat now or I will prove to you why humanity has remained hidden in this galaxy for so long." Ko looked around the bridge, at the faces of his crew, veterans who had conquered entire systems without flinching. Now they stared at the gauges in shock and fear. For the first time in his long career, Field Marshal Chorus gave an order he never thought he'd utter. All ships retreated at full speed, towards Council space. As the surviving Seps fled human territory, Cole wondered what other surprises awaited them. If the humans had hidden their true capabilities for so long, what else did they know? What else had they prepared? Behind them, the human ships made no attempt to pursue. They could only watch as the remnants of the Council's great invasion fleet limped away, defeated. Admiral Chen's final transmission followed them into the darkness. "Please convey my best regards to the Supreme Arbiter, Marshal. Tell him I look forward to meeting you again." As Eternal Victory leaped into hyperspace, Chorus realized with growing horror that this had not been a battle at all. This had been a demonstration. The humans had shown enough ability to make their point, but he suspected they had only revealed a fraction of their true power. The question that had haunted him on his escape was simple. If this was all the humans could do when they held themselves back, what would happen if they abandoned mercy? High Arbiter Zextel's crystalline form shimmered an angry red as he stood before the emergency council. Only half the usual delegates were present. The remaining they were dealing with crises on their home planets. "Explain again how a primitive race had wiped out 2/3 of our invasion fleet," he demanded. His voice pierced the room like broken glass. War Marshal Chorus stood before the council table, his usually proud demeanor hunched in defeat. His scarred face showed fatigue, and something else, fear. "They are no primitives," Korath said quietly. "All our intelligence reports were wrong. Their technology far surpasses ours. Their ships are undetectable by all our sensors. Their weapons can destroy even our largest ships in seconds." "That's impossible," the science elite said. "I have personally analyzed their technological capabilities. They use fusion power, kinetic energy weapons and basic computer system. There's no way they could have such advanced technology." "Then explain." Korath activated a holographic display showing the battle record. The council members watched in stunned silence as the human ships appeared from nowhere, effortlessly destroyed the council ships, and then vanished again. "They knew we were coming," Korath continued. "They knew our exact course, our ship's configuration, and even the personal information of our commander. The human admiral spoke my name, revealing new information about my family that was of the highest level of secrecy." The serpentine form of the surreal ambassador twirled nervously. "How can that be? The communications network is completely secure, or so I thought," Chorus replied grimly. "But during the battle our conversations were being broadcast. Private meetings, military planning sessions, even recordings of private correspondence between officers." A shocked silence filled the room. If humans have access to the most secure means of communication, what else could they possibly know? "Your Excellency," a young communications officer burst into the room. An urgent report came from across the council space. Zextor's crystal flashed with irritation. "This meeting is classified. Remove this." "Your Excellency, I want you to listen immediately. Human activity has been reported on every world in the council. It's not just in the human realms anymore. They're here." The council members stared at the officer in disbelief. "What are you talking about here?" General Vexmore demanded. "Human agents have appeared on Kuth Prime Nexus Station, and on every crystal world. They have lived among us for years, perhaps decades. They know everything about our society, our military, and our government." Bernara's pale skin flickered as her cybernetic implants processed this information with superhuman speed. "Conduct an immediate security analysis of all council personnel, including cross-referencing with human genetic markers." "It's already underway," the officer replied. "Preliminary investigations are disturbing. Human operatives and bases have been identified throughout the council's jurisdiction. Research facilities, military bases, government agencies and even domestic servants of high-ranking officials." "How many exactly?" Zatul, "Your Excellency, We have identified over 10,000 individuals so far, and the number continues to grow. Some have been there for over 50 years. The impact has taken a physical toll on the Council. If humans had been infiltrating their society for half a century, they would have had access to everything. Military plans, technological developments, political decisions, personal secrets. Now I understand how they knew about our invasion, Chorus said bitterly. They've been watching us all this time, but why? Advisor Mars asked. If they were so advanced, why did they hide? Why did they let us believe we had the upper hand? Before anyone could answer, every display screen in the room lit up simultaneously. A human face appeared. An elderly man with white hair and calm, intelligent eyes said, "Greetings, High Arbiter Zuth, all and respected members of the Council. I am Marcus Webb, head of human intelligence. I believe we need to speak." Zextel's crystal body flared up in rage. "How dare you interrupt a closed council meeting? Our communication systems are completely secure." Director Webb smiled sadly. "For over 40 years you have not received any secure information from us, Supreme Arbiter. We have been monitoring your movements since our first contact. Every council meeting, military planning session, and private conversation is recorded and analyzed." Impossible. As Falara tried to track the signal, her cybernetic implants ignited. "Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. It certainly can't be decoded from the outside," Webb replied, "but it can be monitored from the inside." The engineer who designed our current communications protocols graduated from a human university 20 years before joining the Council. She has been reporting to us since the day she was hired. The Council members looked at each other in growing horror. "How deep has this incursion gone? What is its purpose?" Zexel asked, first wanting to understand whether the races of this galaxy were capable of wisdom and peaceful coexistence. He hoped that in time you would be able to outgrow your current tendencies toward domination and conquest. And now at last he had the answer. "You have unanimously voted to destroy us without any serious diplomatic effort. You intend to enslave our survivors and use our fate to terrorize other species. You have shown your true colors." General Bexmore's insectoid features clicked in anger. "You speak as if you are our judge. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We brought order to chaos, civilization to a primitive world. Did you too?" Webb's expression grew cold. "Let me show you." The display switched on, showing footage of dozens of different worlds, showing council forces razing cities, enslaving people, and strip mining entire planets for their resources. The footage was frighteningly casual in its brutality. These records were recorded by our observers over the past century. "This is the order you have brought to the galaxy, and the civilization you represent," Ambassador Suriel protested. "These worlds refused to accept the authority of the Council. They brought their own fate, as you believe," Webb replied. "The difference is, we have the power to deal with it." "Are you threatening me?" Sexter's voice carried the authority of 3 millennia of rule. "We offer you a choice," Webb said calmly. "Complete withdrawal of humanity from space, an immediate cessation of all aggression against non-council species, and submission to a new galactic authority that values life over power. If you refuse, I will show you what humanity is truly capable of. When you drop your primitive pretensions." Chorus stepped forward. "You have only shown a fraction of your true potential in this battle. If that had been your holding back, General Chorus, your surviving ships would have detected only 1% of our fleet's full strength. The ships you engaged were comparable in size to our patrol boats. None of our main fleet was involved." The color drained from Korath's face. If it was a patrol boat that wiped out most of the fleet, what could a real warship do? "That's bluffing," Bernara said. "No species could hide their technological advances for so long. Science Prime." "Bernara," Webb said. Her voice was heavy, and her cybernetic implants flickered uneasily. 3 hours ago, our engineering teams completed modifications to your home planet's primary fusion reactor. We have been managing your planet's power grid for the past 6 months. With a single command, we can cut off power to your planet indefinitely." Valara's pale skin has turned pure white. Her home planet was home to over 50 billion life forms. Without power, they would freeze to death within days. Webb continued. "Our nanobiology experts have studied the unique physiology of each of the Council's species. We now have a targeted bioweapon capable of wiping out some or all of your species, while sparing the others. Bioweapons are prohibited by galactic law." Council member Mars protested. "Whose law?" Webb asked quietly. "Laws imposed by the Council through force and threats of extermination. The same laws that allowed them to vote for our destruction without trial or negotiation." Webb called out each Council member by name, revealing specific details about their personal lives, their families and hidden secrets. Information that an outsider would never have access to. How long? Sextol asked, his crystalline form now a dull, defeated gray. How long have you been watching us? Webb answered, since before the council was formed. We have been in this galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. High Arbiter, we have watched over the development of your species. We watched as you discovered space travel, made contact with other planets, and formed alliances for domination. Now, after 1,000,000 years, General Vexstar's voice came in a faint whisper. General, we are old, older than any other species currently existing in this galaxy. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have seen a species choose between wisdom and strength, cooperation and conquest, and you have failed your test. Sex said, you have chosen to reveal your true nature. When you believed you had every advantage and thought you were facing only primitive resistance, you chose genocide. This told us all we needed to know about the moral character of the council. The chamber was silent, save for the faint rumble of the crystal wall. Every member of the council tried to comprehend the magnitude of what they had learned. They were not the dominant force in the galaxy. They had never been the dominant force. They were like children playing with toys while an ancient being watched from the shadows. What happens now? Chorus asked. That depends on your next decision, Webb replied. Either we accept the new reality and work towards a more peaceful galaxy, or we continue to resist, which will force us to take more direct action. If we surrender, what guarantees do we have? The same guarantees you promised us. War Marshal, nothing. The difference is that we will actually keep our agreement. Your species will be allowed to survive, even thrive, but under new governance. The era of council rule is over. As if to emphasize his point, the display cut to footage of human fleets emerging from secret bases across the galaxy. Thousands of ships, each larger and more advanced than anything the council had ever constructed. We have been preparing for this day for decades, Webb explained. We have planned for every contingency, anticipated every resistance. Your intelligence networks, military bases, communications systems, power grids, they are all under our control now. This was planned. Sextar said, understanding finally dawning on his aging mind. You had us discover the colony and vote for the invasion. While you thought you had all the power, we needed to know your true colors. Now the question is whether you can be more than you've shown yourself to be. Director Webb's image is beginning to fade. You have 72 standard hours to make a decision. Surrender unconditionally, or accept the price of continuing your path of conquest. Choose wisely. This is the only offer you will receive. Communications went black, and the council was left in stunned silence. After millions of years of believing they ruled the galaxy, they realized they were nothing more than specimens being studied by far-off beings, and that resistance was futile. Outside the crystal chamber, human ships were appearing one after the other across council space. Not an invasion, not an attack, just an announcement of their presence. The message was clear: the galaxy had a new protector, and the era of council rule was over. 50 hours had passed since Director Webb's ultimatum. The council chamber, once a symbol of absolute power, now resembled a graveyard. Emergency meetings continued uninterrupted as reports poured in from across the realm. Supreme Arbiter Sextol stood motionless in the center of the room, his crystalline form shimmering in deep purple and black, hues of despair and rage. The rest of the council members around the table seemed a pale shadow of their former selves. Report on the situation on the outer rim, Sextol ordered. General Vexmore's face was insect-like, his data clicking nervously as he accessed it. 7 member species had declared independence from the Council: the Alteria Republic, the Vegan Alliance and the Century Federation. All claimed to now be under the protection of human cowards, Ambassador Suriel whispered. 50 years on the Council, only to be abandoned at the slightest hint of trouble. Can you blame them? War Marshal Korath asked quietly. Humanity has shown its strength. We know who will win. Science Director Vernilla's cybernetic implants flickered weakly. Her homeworld's power grid had been experiencing random outages for the past 2 days. It's a small reminder of what humanity is capable of. I've been analyzing the movements of the human fleet. They're not just setting up defensive positions, they're surrounding every major council. How many ships do they have? Sextol asked. Confirmed contact is over 15,000, and that's just the number they're showing us. The actual number may be 10 times higher. A hush fell over the chamber as the gravity of the situation dawned. The Council's combined fleet numbered less than 8,000 ships, half of which were already destroyed or scattered. There must be something we can do, General Bexmore insisted. We have spent millions of years building this civilization, and we cannot afford to bow to one upstart species. Upstarts. Coloris chuckled. They've been here longer than any of us. They've been watching over our world since it was still covered with primitive life forms. That can't be. Valera protested, but her voice lacked conviction. No species could have developed such advanced technology and remained hidden for so long. If they weren't trying to hide, a new voice said from the entrance to the room. Everyone turned to see Director Webb quietly enter the room. He looked like just an old man dressed simply, but his presence loomed over the room, enough to make even Sextol take a step back. How did you get past our security? General Vexmore demanded. What kind of security? Webb asked with mild amusement. We've been at this facility for over 30 years. Our own people built the current defenses. He walked to the center of the room and looked around at the council members with eyes that seemed to age forever. I'm here to see if you've made any decision. We still have 22 hours. Sextol said, trying to maintain his dignity. Actually, you only have about 10 minutes, Webb replied calmly. Unfortunately, your recent actions have sped up the timeline. What actions? Ambassador Suriel demanded. Webb motioned, and the chamber's displays came to life, revealing an unknown star system. At its center was a massive space station, larger than most planets. A torrent of energy poured into it from a nearby star. Project Omega, Webb said quietly. A top-secret military project, a starkiller weapon designed to engulf an entire solar system and convert its energy into pure destructive force. The council members stared at the display in shock. Project Omega was known only to the highest levels, and research was conducted in strict secrecy. It was activated 3 hours ago, General Bexmore said defensively. If you try to destroy our civilization, you will take this entire sector of the galaxy with you. 3 hours ago, Webb's expression grew sad. General, Project Omega has been under our control since its conception. Every component was built to our specifications. Every scientist involved has reported back to us. This was designed to demonstrate that resistance would be futile and impossible, Nala breathed. The project was completely compartmentalized. No one knew the entire design except for the AI system that oversaw all of the research. Webb replied. That was developed and deployed at the beginning of the project. On the display, the massive weapon began to change. Instead of charging the starlight beam, it began to turn towards the Council fleet's position. You see, Webb continued, I wanted you to create something that would show that further resistance is futile. Project Omega is proof of that. A weapon you spent 50 years and vast resources building is now turned against you. Shut down. Zexal ordered. Emergency shutdown protocol. We've already tried it. General Vexler's voice was hollow. It didn't respond to our commands. The AI shut us out completely. Because it wasn't your AI, Webb explained patiently. Every aspect of this project had been designed to give you a sense of ultimate power, but to ensure that that power could never be used against us. Vast weaponry began to glow with portrait stellar energy. Targeting data flashed on the displays, locking onto all of the Council's major military installations simultaneously. This is insane. Councilor Mars protested. We cannot destroy entire star systems. Those planets are home to billions of innocent beings. Webb assured her that they had no intention of destroying anything. But you must understand that even the most desperate measures are powerless against us. Project Omega will launch in 7 minutes, not towards your planet but into empty space. It is a show of force that, if we choose to wield it, could instantly end all resistance. Field Marshal Colas slumped back in his chair, the enormity of his defeat finally sinking in. You had planned it all. You had anticipated our every move. You hadn't anticipated it. The Field Marshal had orchestrated it. We have guided the Council's development over the centuries, leading you to this moment. Every important decision your leadership has made has been influenced by our agents. Every technological advancement was something we allowed you to discover. Why? Zell's crystals had turned a deep, defeated gray. If you had so much power, why didn't you rule openly? Because reigning through fear only produces temporary stability, Webb replied. We needed to know if there were any species in this galaxy who, when given the chance, would choose cooperation over domination. We hoped that you would prove that wisdom can triumph over force. And we failed spectacularly. When faced with a seemingly weaker enemy, you unhesitatingly chose genocide. When presented with the opportunity for peaceful expansion, you asserted your territory through force. When challenged by equal forces, you resorted to weapons of mass destruction. The display showed the final countdown for Project Omega. 3 minutes left, but Webb continued. During my long observations, I have come to an interesting realization. While your leaders have always chosen the path of conquest, many of your people have not. There are millions of beings in Council Universe who have questioned these decisions, who have advocated for peaceful solutions, who have sought to build bridges rather than walls. What are you saying? Asked Councillor Malus. The council will be dissolved as a governing body, but the species itself will be given a new chance under new leadership, under new management, to ensure that humanity does not repeat the mistakes of the past. You intend to replace us, Zex. We intend to guide you, as we should have done all along, rather than expecting you to find the wisdom for yourselves. The galaxy needs to be governed, but by beings who understand that power exists to protect, not to conquer. The countdown reached 1 minute. The display showed Council fleets across the galaxy receiving weapon targeting data. Panic began to spread among the military commanders as they realized their greatest secret weapon was being turned against them. Some of your member species have already contacted us directly. Webb continued. They wish to negotiate separately. The Century Federation has agreed to our terms. The Altaria Republic has requested human advisors to restructure its government. Some of your own people are beginning to see reason. Traitors, foul-mouthed Ambassador Surial, survivors and webfix. They recognize that their old ways of thinking have led them to this situation. They are choosing adaptation over extinction. Countdown to 10 seconds. Council members watched in horror and fascination as Project Omega prepared to demonstrate the ultimate futility of their resistance. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The weapon fired. A beam of pure stellar energy, powerful enough to shatter a planet, erupted from the massive station. But instead of targeting the Council fleet, the beam hurtled through space, vaporizing asteroids and gas clouds, a destructive force visible from hundreds of light-years away. Webb said quietly, "That is what we could do to any world on the Council if we wanted to. Instead, we choose mercy. But mercy once given can never be given again." The room was silent, save for the faint rumble of the crystal wall. All the Council members stared at the display, coming to terms with the reality that their most powerful weapon had been transformed into a demonstration of their utter powerlessness. "What will become of us?" Zexor finally asked. "That depends on your individual choices," Webb replied. "Those who committed war crimes will face justice. Those who merely followed orders will be given the opportunity to learn a new way of thinking. Those who actively opposed the Council's aggressive policies will find positions in the new government. Those who refuse to cooperate will be transported to a world where they can live out their lives without the ability to harm others. We believe in justice, but we also believe in mercy, even those who show neither justice nor mercy to others." Webb began to leave but stopped at the entrance to the chamber. "You each have 1 hour to make a decision. Surrender unconditionally and cooperate with the provisional government, or be banished forever. Choose wisely. This is truly your last chance." His voice echoed to them as he walked away. "The era of Council rule is over. The age of wisdom begins now, whether you are a part of it or not." The remaining Council members in the Crystal Chamber looked at each other, realizing that their civilization, built on millions of years of conquest and domination, had ended not with a bang, but with a thud. They were overcome by trickery, schemes and power far beyond their own, and resistance was not even a realistic option. One by one they were forced to choose. Some chose cooperation, trying to find their place in the new order. Others chose exile, unable to accept a universe in which they no longer had ultimate authority. But all understood that the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had emerged from the shadows, and a new era had dawned, one in which strength served wisdom, rather than the other way around. 1 year had passed since the Council's surrender. The Crystal Chamber, once home to the galaxy's most powerful rulers, now served as a museum and a reminder of what happened when power was not checked by wisdom. Director Webb stood before a large viewing window, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together to build new space stations, not military installations, but research facilities, hospitals and schools. The galaxy was learning to build, not conquer. Administrator Sarah Chen, who had been promoted from military rank to oversee the interim government, reported that the integration process was going better than expected. 73% of the former Council species had fully embraced the new cooperative arrangement. Webb nodded, focusing on a group of ships, former enemies operating side by side, crews beginning to see each other as partners, not threats. And the resistance movement was primarily centered on the outer planets, small groups of extremists who refused to accept the new reality. They weren't a real threat, but we were keeping a close eye on them. Good. What happened to the individual Council members? Chen examined the tablet. High Arbiter Zexel chose exile, living quietly among the misfits on a small planet in the Andromeda galaxy. War Marshal Cora, that's the more interesting story. He chose cooperation and became one of our most capable military advisors. He says defeat taught him the difference between conquest and defense. His insight into the military thinking of the former Council is invaluable. Webb smiled. Sometimes the deepest wisdom comes from the greatest failures. What about Science Prime? She initially chose exile, but changed her mind 6 months later. She now leads our technology sharing program, helping former council species adapt to more advanced systems. She says working with our scientists has made her realize how little she knows about the universe. Through the viewing window, they see a familiar sight, a former council warship being converted into a research vessel. Weapons were stripped, armor repurposed for scientific instruments, symbols of dominance transformed into tools of discovery. Have you heard anything from the observatory? Webb asked. 3 new species have achieved spaceflight in the past 6 months. Each has been contacted according to new protocols. The first contact team offers friendship and knowledge rather than subservience. Their reaction was cautiously positive. They had heard stories of the fall of the Council and the rise of a new galactic government. Most were relieved that initial contact had been peaceful in intent. Webb walked over to his desk, where reports from across the galaxy awaited his attention. Crime rates were down. Interspecies conflict was at its lowest level in recorded history. With species now freely sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it, research and development progressed at an unprecedented rate. I sometimes pedants, Chen said quietly. We waited too long to intervene. How many species suffered under the Council's rule while we observed and gathered information? I agree, Webb admitted, but direct intervention sooner might have created a different kind of tyranny. They rule not through true cooperation but through fear of our superiority. The Council was forced to reveal its true colors once it was convinced it had every advantage. Otherwise, it might have merely pretended to have changed while planning future conquests. And now we know clearly who can be trusted with power and who cannot. A race that chooses cooperation over conquest, diplomacy over domination. They are the cornerstone of a new order. A soft chime signaled an incoming priority message. Chen checked his comm, frowning. Sir, something has happened in the Vega system. It appears former Council loyalists have taken over a military base and are making demands. What are they? They want the Council reinstated. They say humanity has no right to rule over other species. They are threatening to attack civilians if their demands are not met. Webb sighed. Although the transition has been largely successful, there will always be those who support the old regime. How big is this group? About 200 people, mostly former military personnel who lost their jobs when the Council collapsed. They have 3 old cruisers and a small ground force, and they think that gives them an advantage over us. They apparently believe that if they create enough noise, other resistance groups will join their cause. Webb looked out the window at the peaceful scene. Ships working together, crews of different species eating together in the common area. Children from a dozen worlds played together in the station's recreation area. When fear turns to trust, this is what the galaxy could become. Contact Commander Torres at Vega Outpost, he said. Finally, tell him to handle this situation with minimal force. These people were angry and desperate, not evil. Offer them the same choice everyone else had, cooperation or exile. If they rejected both options, they would understand why resistance was futile. But they had to understand that the choice was theirs. Chen left to coordinate a response, and Webb returned to his report. Each document told a story of change. Worlds that were once slaveholding have transformed into independent democracies. Races that were enemies for centuries are learning to cooperate. Scientific discoveries that would have taken decades under the old order are now achieved in months through cooperation. But perhaps the most intriguing news comes from Earth itself. For over 1 million years, humanity masqueraded as a primitive species, housed on a small planet, maintaining hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. Now that the masquerade is over, the true nature of human civilization is beginning to emerge. Thousands of planets have advanced far beyond the Council's imagination. Cities built at the centers of stars, space habitats larger than planets, technology that seemed to bend the very laws of physics, and at its heart was an ancient commandment that had guided humanity for millennia. To protect and nurture life wherever it was found. We didn't want to be masters, Webb muttered to himself, repeating words exchanged in countless human meetings over the centuries. I wanted to be a guardian. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. To his surprise, the visitor was War Marshal Chorus. The large Keith warrior looked like a different man. His ceremonial armor had been replaced with simple civilian clothing, and his demeanor was less aggressive and more thoughtful. Director Webb, I apologize for the interruption. Very well, Commander. Please take a seat. What can I help you with today? Chorus sat down in a chair designed for his large frame. I wanted to talk to you about the situation in the Vega system. Do you have any thoughts on how to deal with our rebellious colleagues? Yes, I do. They are soldiers who have lost their purpose and their identity. Under the Council, they defined themselves by their ability to conquer and dominate. Now they feel powerless and forgotten. So you suggest I speak to them. As someone who has made the same choice they have, I might be able to help them understand what they are truly choosing. Webb has researched the former enemy commander. It could be dangerous. They may see you not as a voice of reason, but as a traitor who must be eliminated. But it's a risk worth taking. They are not our enemy, Director. They are victims of a system that has instilled in them that might makes right. With the right guidance, they could be valuable members of the new order. Very well, but you cannot go it alone. Assemble a team of volunteers from species that have suffered under the Council's rule, but who choose forgiveness over vengeance. We will show them the results of our new approach. Chorus nodded. I'll leave now. As the warlord departed, Webb reflected on the irony of the situation. A year earlier, Collis had led an invasion force sent to destroy humanity. Now he was risking his life to prevent needless violence. A perfect example of just how extraordinary this shift was. Not just a shift in power structures, but a fundamental shift in how humans think about strength, purpose, and relationships with others. The communications system brought up an update from the Vega system. Commander Torres reported that the rebels had agreed to meet with Korath. A first step toward a peaceful resolution. Webb returned to the observation window. In the distance, she could see the site of a joint research station being built by worlds that had once belonged to the Council. Children raised under the threat of conquest now learned about exploration and discovery, but the most moving sight was the arrival of small ships from the Outer Rim territories, representatives of species that had only ever known rule by the Council, joining the new galactic community not as subjects, but as equal. A voice came over the intercom from Admiral Chen to Director Webb. Please, Admiral, I have received a very unusual request. A group of young Council species born after the transition began have requested permission to visit Earth. Earth? Yes, Admiral. They wish to see a world where humanity has learned the balance between power and wisdom. They said they wanted to understand how a species could have such advanced capabilities and yet choose to use them for defense rather than conquest. Webb smiled. These young people would be the first generation to grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was valued over domination. Their curiosity about Earth represented hope for a future where the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Approved, he said, but I want to make sure they understand what they see there. Admiral, Earth was never our home. It was our testing ground, where we learned to be human. They need to understand that, even with the powers of a god, the true lessons lie not in the world itself, but in the choices we made there. I will make sure they understand, Admiral. After the call ended, Webb gazed at the stars and imagined a future where humanity would emerge from hiding after 1,000,000 years of careful observation and patient waiting, revealing its true colors through protection, not conquest. They ruled the galaxy not to dominate, but to lead it to a better place. The Council voted to invade Earth. Confident in their numbers and technological might, they expected a primitive being to emerge, one that would either submit or be destroyed. But they discovered that the galaxy's true protectors had been watching all this time, waiting for the moment they would need to intervene. With representatives of dozens of species working together to build a better future, Webb could finally say his long wait was worth it. The galaxy was learning to choose wisdom over might, cooperation over conquest, and hope over fear, and in the distance, a faint light shone against the starry sky. New starships were launching from humanity's shipyard. Not a warship, but a research vessel, manned by volunteers from across the galaxy. A ship carrying a message of a new order to the far reaches of the universe. A galaxy where strength serves life, where strength protects the innocent, and wisdom guides all. An age of domination has ended. An age of cooperation has begun. And for the first time in 1,000,000 years, humanity could come out of hiding and start building the future we've always dreamed of.